Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and today on the show, my friend Jeff Victor is joining me to talk about Millennium Falcon, Smugglers Run over at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. You've done one before?
I have. We talked about our favorite storytelling elements.
That was a while ago, but today, Millennium Falcon, Smugglers Run. So let's jump into that conversation right now.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Okay, so let's just start with the story of Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run. Of course, this is the big attraction that's currently open at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We're still waiting for Rise of the Resistance to open, but let's start with the story of Smugglers Run, shall we?
Let's go for it.
Okay, so the story basically takes place after the events of Star Wars The Last Jedi, and Chewbacca has brought the Falcon to Blackspire Outpost for repairs at this spaceport on the edge of the galaxy. And in exchange for some much-needed replacement parts, Chewie is loaning the Falcon to Hondo Ohnaka, a smuggler who is now making good use of the ship. Hondo, you may know from Star Wars Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels. I did not know him. Did you know him?
I did.
You watched a lot of
He's a big
stuff.
character within both those series. He's a big supporting, I should say.
Yeah, and he's a bit of a pirate, and he's always looking for the next big score with his legitimate business, Ohnaka Transport Solutions. And when we meet him, he tells us that he has more cargo than he can handle, and he needs some extra flight crews, and that's where we come into play. Anything else that we need to let folks know about the story of the attraction?
That's pretty much it. Hondo is a Wookiee, I think is how you say it, or
okay.
alien. So he is a little bit alien, so he's old. Like, really old.
Like Yoda old?
Not Yoda old, but maybe Chewie old. Because
Okay.
when you meet him in Clone Wars to the time of Last Jedi, that's almost 80 years. And how he looks as an animatronic is relatively similar.
Who's the voice of him? Is it Jim Cummings?
It is Jim Cummings.
Jim Cummings, Mr. Winnie the Pooh himself. And as I said, I didn't know who this character was. A lot of people didn't. And that was the big thing I remember when they revealed this animatronic online and stuff months before Galaxy's Edge opened. A lot of people were like, who is this guy? And like, why is that the person you kind of chose to tell the story? I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I have zero emotional connection to the character when I see him. And although the animatronic is pretty darn cool, I don't know. I was just like, eh.
I think it is kind of a weird choice. While I do watch the Clone Wars and I did watch Rebels, I enjoy the character quite a bit, but I also find it weird that he's in the Last Jedi timeline, in the current timeline.
Oh, does that not make sense based on the... No. I mean, he's really old, you said.
He's just old. It's just like, it's weird that they picked a cartoon character to make him be the launching point for the Millennium Falcon ride.
So he'd only been seen animated before.
Correct.
This. Okay, so since you know the animated character, how does the quote-unquote real-life version of that look in comparison?
So he looks pretty much exactly how he did in the Rebels TV series, which takes a little bit place after the Clone Wars TV series. The character, for those of you that don't know, is he's not good and he's not bad either. He just kind of does what's best for him.
Kind of like Han Solo.
He's like a more bad version of Han Solo.
Okay. Cool.
So he's just really out to make a buck.
Yeah, no, we're fast forwarding a little bit here, but since we're talking about him, what did you think of that audio animatronic figure?
Okay, so when I first saw it, I was just like, oh, okay, it's all right. And when me and Jeff actually rode the ride, he noticed that his feet look like they are on ice skates.
He looks like he's on ice. It's very weird. So listen, obviously we're at a point with audio animatronics, like they're amazing these days. And any complaints we have are very nitpicky. But, in the past, audio animatronic figures were bolted to the ground. And, you didn't see them walk, quote unquote, very often. And that's becoming kind of the new standard, is figuring out convincing ways to make them walk. I know years ago they did this. There's a really impressive piece of The American Adventure over at Epcot where you see, I think it's Ben Franklin climb a couple of stairs. And it's like really well done, like convincingly done, which is why when we saw this in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, where, he's supposed to be walking around instead of standing in one spot, he's supposed to, move from spot to spot, except like he glides. His knees bend a little, but it really looks like he's just like sliding on ice. And it was a very weird thing that I'm just like, I kind of wish he was bolted to the ground, because this is taking it out of it for me. Taking me out of it, rather.
Yeah, I didn't notice the gliding as much until the next time I went through. But if he was in one place, it'd be so much easier for him to just turn, because he's only rotating between 2 panels.
Yeah.
But they have him kind of mini pacing, not like real pacing, just like, here, let me take 2 steps, rotate.
Which is fine. I have no problem with like how little he takes steps. It's just like, I don't know. It just wasn't convincing.
Yeah.
As far as like new age audio animatronics are concerned, the Na'vi shaman in Pandora: The World of Avatar is far more convincing than this character.
Now, the one thing that I did notice upon going back and rewatching some like video footage of it is his voice doesn't necessarily match his movement as well as it should, because his voice is very like over the top, like big, and then his movements are very small and isolated.
Okay.
And I just felt like the energy didn't match.
Interesting. So one thing, I mean, obviously the first thing you see when it comes to this attraction is the Millennium Falcon. And that's like probably the biggest, it's the biggest reveal in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So what did you think when you saw the Falcon for the first time?
It's gigantic.
Yeah.
It's much bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish they didn't have the security gates below it, but I understand why they do.
They don't bother me in the least. I know people have a big problem with like the quote unquote fence, and like I already talked about this in an episode, but I mean, remember the metal sporks?
Yeah.
Did you hear that people were stealing them? They're on eBay already.
Yeah.
So it's like, if people are stealing metal sporks from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, it's a very good thing they put up a protective gate to stop people
try
from
to break things off the Falcon.
People would 1,000% try to break things off the Falcon and sell pieces of it, which is absurd and ridiculous. But yeah, the fence, it's totally in theme. It's not like, a normal theme park fence that would roll into place. It's themed to the environment, so it doesn't bother me at all.
But would I ask you, would you like to touch the Falcon?
Sure. It's not like a dream to touch the Falcon or anything, so no. But it's an impressive set piece. Like, it's really, really beautiful. It's lit beautifully at night, and it makes a really, really great first impression.
And I did hear while we were in the park, we didn't see it, but sometimes Chewie's supposed to be underneath it, actually working on it.
Oh, really? It's funny. I've seen photos of Chewie around Galaxy's Edge. I haven't seen... I didn't see him personally at all.
Yeah, he wasn't there the day we were there.
I was there for like 9 hours, and I never saw him.
Yeah.
So Chewie called out sick? I don't know. But I know he has been hanging around quite a bit.
So I would have really liked to have seen Chewie actually drop down from the Falcon and work on it.
I want him to go into the cockpit every once in a while. Like, he can get in there because they did it during the opening celebration. So, it's accessible. I just don't know how easily. But yeah, that'd be cool to see him hanging around there.
Like, I would almost rather have Chewie be in and amongst the ride as a character than be walking around.
Well, he was supposed to be in the waiting room.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be a photo op situation for him that got cut because it was causing problems. But yeah. Now, obviously, we just went through the story of this attraction. I am curious, though, when you experienced the attraction, was the story clear to you?
Not even in the slightest.
Really?
You are rushed through almost every room.
Yes. So that was a big problem. First of all, I do want to say, if you single rider this, which is a good option if you don't have much time to do it, you will not see the audio animatronic of Hondo Ohnaka. So keep that in mind if that's like a big thing. I know for me, animatronics are a huge deal. So like not getting to see him on single rider is a big deal if it's going to be your one and only time. So keep that in mind. But yeah, everything pre-show related, except for maybe his room, you were rushed through. So you go in his room, he gives his spiel, and then like there's definitely other rooms that have pre-show videos and stuff.
Yeah, so the very first room that you enter in, you go in. So when you enter the ride, you go into the cargo docking bay for the ship, and then you walk around a ramp, and then you go into an engine room. And in the engine room, there's an engine hanging up on the wall, and there's someone working there on it. On audio, so not in person, but on audio. And then they'll like turn the engine on and off, and they'll be saying things, but it's not loud enough for you to actually understand. But when I went back and watched some of the videos of that section, you can clearly hear that they're talking about what you're going to be doing.
Okay. Which I like. I like those little things that like, It's, to me, those are like treats for people who are paying attention.
Right.
Now, if you're waiting in a long line, you're more likely to catch a lot of this stuff. We were lucky enough, I was lucky enough every time I did it to just walk by most of this stuff. But the queue stuff, it doesn't bother me. If I'm missing little treats in the queue by my choice because I'm walking through it quickly, that's one thing. The thing that bothers me is when you are in pre-show rooms where they're setting you up for the attraction and they don't even let you watch the entire video.
Yeah, when I went into the Hondo room the first time, I feel like I only got like a portion of the show.
Yeah, you probably did. I definitely walked in after the video had started. You're talking about the animatronic room?
The animatronic room.
Oh, okay. The animatronic room, I think I got the whole thing. They may start it before everybody's in there.
I think they did, because when I got in, I felt like he was already like halfway through, because Chewie all of a sudden appeared on the wall, and I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Why is Chewie on the video screen?
Yeah, it's very weird because, like, obviously a lot of thought is put into this. There are people who write those things and produce those things, and everything, they know there's a limited amount of time to tell this story. And so they really carefully think this through. Yet then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, logistically, how are we going to get people through here as quickly as possible? And then it becomes a whole other thing. And like, it drives me nuts when that happens. And unfortunately, even on a non-busy day, I mean, we walked on the attraction in 10 minutes in a lot of cases, and they were still pumping people through really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So if you're there to understand the story, you're not going to pick it up just from going through the queue. The video room was even worse. The video room I went into, and I went in after it started, and they took us out of there before it ended. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah. So after you get put into the lounge area of the Falcon, that's like, there's so many different waiting rooms before you go into.
Yeah.
So you go into the lounge. That's where the photo ops are, where you can take a picture on like
the chessboard thing.
Chessboard.
Whatever
which is Dejeric, which is hollow chess. And then you're rushed out of that room, I feel like.
Yeah, so this room was super cool. I mean, this room was a dream for any major Star Wars fan. This is the room where you really feel like you're in the Falcon. Even like as a casual Star Wars fan, I was like, oh, like this is all very recognizable to me. This is super cool. But I had a bunch of issues with this room because, number one, like you said, you're rushed through it pretty quickly. And then on top of that, you're there with a bunch of other groups who are all going on their own separate rides. And I was like, okay, like this, to me, I don't feel like I am flying the Millennium Falcon. Like in this room, it is very clear to me that there are many groups going off to do the same thing. Yeah, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, how I would have fixed it, I would have had 2 of those rooms.
There should have been more than 2 of those rooms. I understand why there's not logistics, budgets, all that stuff. Like they can't do it, but it didn't make it feel like an individual experience, which I think is interesting because, like, obviously the ride, there's only 6 of you in the Millennium Falcon cockpit, which makes it feel like a very individual ride, I would say. But then it's very clear that other people are loading the same situation as you. So I don't know, like, to me, that was a bit of a fail.
Yeah, the first time I went in there, I felt like I had like 3 minutes in that lounge area.
One of the times I had probably a minute.
Yeah,
like it was crazy.
The next 3 times I went in, it was under a minute. So if you wanted to get a picture at the holo game, the holo chess board,
yeah,
good luck before your team gets.
Yeah, it was, and you know what? The cast members are doing their job. They're getting people through there as quickly as possible. But it's not like I said, Chewbacca was supposed to be there for meet and greets. That would have never worked based on the current way that they're dealing with it. It's very weird. When you're in that room, you're broken up into color groups, very much like the lightsaber experience I talked about earlier in the week. And once again, it's weird. They give you these colored cards and they tell you which position you're going to be at, which we'll talk about a bit more in a second. But it felt old-fashioned. I was like, really? We're handing out like colored cards to organize this? I was like, it just felt like there must be a better, more 21st century way of dealing with that. And I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little bit unique, especially when you're in the lounge area. And then they're like, when I did it as a single rider, it was really strange because I didn't know anyone in my group.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, all right, brown team right over here. And then you'd go with your brown team and then they'd line you up. And then so you line up as the 2 pilots are front, the 2 gunners are in the middle, and then the 2 engineers are in the back.
Yep.
And then it was like, surprise, here's your crew.
I mean, that's what single rider is.
Yeah.
So that doesn't
Or if
bother
you're
me.
even with a duo, like if me and you just went on together, we'd have 4 strangers with us.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't bother me at all. But the pilot, gunner, engineer thing, these are 3 very different positions. The pilot is what it sounds like. You are piloting the plane, so you are either controlling up and down or left and right. And then there are the gunners, which is the only position I didn't end up doing. Did you do all 3?
I did all 3.
Okay. So the gunner, you're gunning stuff down.
Yes.
And then the engineers are quote unquote fixing stuff. So when you see lights blinking, you basically smash the lights and it fixes the problem. And it's really interesting to me because I'm hearing from so many people so many different thoughts on what they prefer as far as the position is concerned. There's some people saying this ride isn't even worth anything unless you're a pilot. Then there are other people saying I don't want a pilot because it's way too much stress. And I get it. And it's problematic, I would say. If you do want to do a certain position, you can certainly hold out and say, hey, I'm going to wait to be a pilot or whatever for the next group. And they're cool about that, as they are with like everything if you're waiting for front row or for something. But you having done all 3, what are your thoughts on the 3 different positions?
Having done all 3, pilot is definitely the one to go to if you actually want like an enjoyable ride experience where it feels like you're doing something.
Okay.
The gunner, you just press a button the whole time and it shoots whatever side. If you're on the right side, it shoots the right laser. If you're on the left gunner spot, it shoots the left laser. It auto aims.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't fun at all.
Okay. And I mean, engineer's essentially the same thing.
Engineer's the same thing. You sit in the back row, and when a certain button lights up, you hit it. And sometimes you have to hit like 4 buttons to fix whatever you're fixing. What I found with engineer, though, because it's so far back, is if you worry about the buttons, you completely don't even look at the screen.
Yeah, I mean, when I did engineer, I didn't worry about the buttons. I would watch the screen, and if I saw something blinking in my peripheral, I'd smack the wall, and that was it. And that would, quote-unquote, fix the situation. It is interesting. I did pilot it. I did the left and right when my buddy Preston was doing up and down, and we had some... So this is the biggest problem with the attraction. By the way, I enjoyed the attraction overall. I will say that. But the biggest problem is when you're in there with strangers... People, and this was the problem that people were talking about beforehand, you're not going to crash in 10 seconds. It is programmed so that doesn't happen. But I had people yelling at us as the pilot, and frankly, we weren't doing terribly. We weren't doing well, but we weren't doing terribly either. And they were just yelling, up, down, left, right. And it's like, dude, calm down. And like, even if I did those things, listen, the game is programmed to do certain things. There are definitely times where I would go left and right where it would do that. And then there are other times where I'd do the same exact thing and it would do it on a much lesser scale to make sure you were on track to whatever's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I had the same experience I was the up and down pilot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would push it up and it wasn't moving at all. And then all of a sudden it would just like shoot up.
Yeah, so it's triggered to do certain things. You are controlling it in a sense, but you are not really controlling it. So when strangers are yelling at you, and then when it ends, and then they're like, that ride sucked, I blame the pilots. I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, what's your problem? Like,
so having done the ride 4 different times, it's 90% the same exact ride every time.
All 3 times you get you hit the same points.
Yeah, the only difference is if you have really bad pilots, when you shoot out to hyperspace to end the ride, you actually go into an asteroid field. And then there's TIE fighters attacking you in the asteroid field.
I want to do that.
Yeah, and you have to navigate through that, and then you go to the planet.
Why do you think that happens?
That I'm not sure.
Is that just to add length to the attraction?
It adds length, because it adds at least another 20 seconds to the ride.
Okay.
But it was more fun than if you flew good.
Yeah, like that is weird. And so one cool thing is when you exit the attraction... Based on how you fly, like the hallway reacts. So you'll see sparks flying, lights flashing, or some little smoke, and you'll see the ship is damaged physically if you're a really bad flyer. And then the better you are, the less damaged the ship is, which is a really nice touch. I think most people probably don't notice this. I don't think I would have if like a cast member hadn't been like, look what you did to my ship. Like, so did you notice it?
I only noticed it after you pointed it out.
Okay.
But the first time I was on it, the ship wrecked, and would never have guessed.
Yeah. So I think that's a really cool touch. Unfortunately, most people I don't think will get that. And we didn't even talk about this. What was your first impression when you saw the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon?
It's awesome. It looks just like the movie.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay, cool. I was, to be honest, I was a little worried about claustrophobia because I get like selectively claustrophobic, and I was a little freaked out by that. It has a high enough ceiling that although it's a small space, the high enough ceiling, I was fine in it. First time I did it was engineer, second time pilot, third time engineer. And I was cool. It moves way less than Star Tours.
Yeah, I get sick on Star Tours. I didn't even feel remotely anything on this one.
Yeah, this is much, like, to the point that there's really not even a place. If you have a backpack, you just stick it by your feet, and it's not going to go anywhere. So that was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, it moves like one of those 4DX chairs that you see at the movie theaters, where it just like vibrates and kind of waves a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's in sync very well with the video you're looking at. So, that prevents any nauseous feelings if you're prone to that. But it just wasn't as exhilarating. The ride itself is not exhilarating in the way that Star Tours is. The exhilarating part, I think, is if you're a pilot and you have some control over what's going on.
Yeah, if you're not a pilot, you have no control of what's going on for the most part.
Yeah, and I think the bigger problem with this is that there's going to be a lot of people who just don't want to participate. Like, as far as, like, I know a lot of older folks who just be like, I just want to ride the ride. Can I just go ride it? And the answer is, yeah, you can. But, there are certain things that aren't going to happen because you're not playing along. I feel like there should be a do nothing version of the ride.
There is. So when you sit into the ride and you plug yourself in, in order for your things to activate, you have to hit the button on the wall to activate your section. Okay. If it's not activated, it doesn't work.
So you as an individual cannot activate, but everybody else can, and that's still
correct.
Cool? Okay. Well, why don't they tell you that?
They did not tell you that even a little bit.
Yeah, why don't they tell you? That seems like an important piece of the puzzle.
Yes. I think they're just expecting everyone to want to participate because it is the opening.
What if you're a pilot and you choose not to participate?
I don't know how that would work.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think the pilots have to.
Huh.
Because one's up and down, one's left and right. If the pilots don't work.
I kind of want to go in with everybody agreeing, don't participate. Yeah, and let's just see what happens. Like, because maybe it would be the perfect ride at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the computer takes over and it's the perfect ride.
I know I saw a video of someone go in and just purposely wreck it.
Okay.
And that was funny too.
Yeah, even if you're not purposefully wrecking it, I feel like it's pretty easy to wreck it. But yeah, what did you feel about the video quality?
It's a cartoon.
Yes.
And it's not realistic looking at all.
At all. It looks like you're playing a video game. I repeat, I enjoyed the attraction. I just have a lot of issues with it.
When you compare it to what you experience in the movies, it's straight up like an animated video game.
It looks like a video game, like tremendously like a video game, which was surprising and disappointing to me. I wanted realism. To me, this was a Disney ride. This wasn't... I flew the Millennium Falcon. Like, I don't know. I just didn't believe it as I did what they did in the movies,
Yeah, it felt nothing like that.
To me, Star Tours is a better Star Wars experience than Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run.
I would agree with that.
Which is a really, really disappointing statement. Admittedly, this is not the e-ticket attraction for this land. We've still got that coming by the end of the year, supposedly. And that one I'm expecting to be honest, this whole time, when I was reading about and getting ready for these, I kept feeling like, okay, this other attraction...
The Resistance?
Rise of the Resistance. I kept saying, okay, this is the attraction that is like going to blow my mind. And then Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run is just another option in the land. So it's a little weird that like right now in that land, that's the e-ticket, because to me, it's probably a D-ticket attraction. So like that's all we got right now. And I kept saying to myself, I felt like I was going to feel like after I did Flight of Passage at Pandora, which was, to me, Flight of Passage, I've said it several times, it feels like 30% better Soarin'. It's essentially the same attraction. And I thought I was going to feel that way about Smugglers Run. It's a 30% better version of Star Tours. Number one, it's not. It's very different than Star Tours. And number two, I think Star Tours is better. So... I don't know. It's kind of a harsh statement about this brand new, very expensive attraction they built.
If you're a pilot, it's fun. How I would fix it was The spots make no sense because when you're in that cockpit, unless you're the pilot or the navigator, nothing else happens in the cockpit realistically. So like the gunner spots, if you remember from the movies, are one person climbs up, one person climbs down.
Oh, okay. Well, now that would be wild if you had to do that.
That would be awesome because then you could actually feel like you're controlling and you're rotating in a chair and you're shooting.
Yeah.
It'd be much more realistic. Where this is, you literally press a button and it auto aims to the TIE fighter you're shooting or the wall.
It's a very, very difficult position they put themselves in to make an attraction this interactive at this level, because there are gamers out there who would rock it whatever position you put them in, but most people aren't. So you need to make it interactive for most people.
So if you gave this a gamer, like just like let's say an Xbox controller and put them in the cockpit and had the same controls, it'd be so much more fun for them.
Yeah.
Because they'd be able to control everything.
Yeah.
Well, when you depend on someone who doesn't care, it's frustrating when you're in the ride.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned how it looks like a video game when you're looking out. The one thing that, like, usually when I ride something after the first time, I'll look around and be like, okay, how is all this being done? I gotta be honest, I'm not 100% sure how this attraction works. Like, even after riding it 3 times, I'm like, obviously I get it. There's a screen and you're going into a pod of sort that's getting moved, but like, I can't visualize a bird's eye view of this working mechanism. And to me, that was impressive. I was like, wow, this really is kind of magic in that sense. Like, I don't know 100% what's going on here.
I actually kind of think that each glass panel is its own TV screen.
Oh, whoa. You think so?
For sure.
If that's the case, then the depth perception that they create is quite phenomenal, because to me, it didn't look that way. Because you may be right.
When I was looking at it, because I was trying to think, because you don't need 3D glasses for this ride.
Which is great.
And it does feel very, you're in a world. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was because each glass pane was projecting its own specific image.
Wow, that's interesting. I don't know. I legitimately have no idea how it's done. I thought it was more like Forbidden Journey over at Wizarding World, where like there was a globe screen that you're kind of in, and you're looking through the glass pane at a globe screen that's kind of following you.
It's just so crystal clear. That's why it made me think it was like an LED screen.
It is clear, but like what was Wizarding World was 9 years ago at this point. So I mean, projection and digital technology has certainly changed since then. So
yeah, but even when you do like bringing in Forbidden Journey and stuff, when those bulbs start to dim, that ride is not clear at all.
Let's check out the Falcon in a year and see what we think. But that's interesting. But man, they created the depth really, really well if that's the case.
So I feel like this ride is a great one-time be the pilot, take it all in.
Sure.
Experience one of the other positions, but the re-rideability of this ride, where you like, oh, I gotta ride Splash Mountain, I gotta ride Indy, is not high.
But that's so weird to say, because so you're saying it's not re-rideable because the only fun position is the pilot because you're actually doing something. Well, what are you doing in Splash Mountain that makes you want to ride it over and over again?
The visuals, the story.
What about the visuals of Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run?
I think just because you don't really are invested in that story as much.
Okay.
And then the story is a little bit weird. So the ride of the story is you go on with Hondo and you go to smuggle some coaxial from Corellia. So they're using their best to bring in the Solo movie into.
Oh, see, I didn't even.
Yeah, so in the
that.
Solo movie, the whole thing is about stealing coaxial, and it takes place in Corellia.
Okay.
And then this one is stealing coaxial on Corellia.
Okay.
And it's the same exact pattern every single time. Like you go into space, you hyperspace to Corellia, you go onto the planet, you think you're stealing this coaxial, and then you just crash through this platform and you just happen to luck into a thing of coaxial. Then the second part of the ride happens, and then you have to pilot a little bit better, and then the engineers have to steal the coaxial, and if the engineers aren't working correctly to press the button 1,000 times, you don't steal it. So most of the ride, people don't steal the second thing of coaxial. It just falls off.
So now here's the thing. I have no idea whether or not that happened in my story. Like it's hard to follow what's happening because you're doing so much. Or maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. But like I was just like, okay, I got these buttons to worry about. I'm watching this thing. I hear Hondo yelling stuff at me, but I'm kind of only half listening because there's so much going on. This is an attraction that I feel like the more you ride it, the more details you'll notice. But I am shocked at how similar each ride was. So I feel like I'm contradicting myself a little bit there. But like, obviously it changes based on what pilots are doing, but it's the same track record the whole time.
Yeah, so it's the same.
Star Tours is way more varied.
Yeah, so it's legitimately the same pattern every single time. Of the 4 times I rode it, we only got the second coaxial stolen once.
Is that when it falls and like rolls out of the crate?
No, that's the first one.
That's the first one. Oh gosh.
So the second one, as soon as you go into the second part of the ride, the engineers shoot it, and they have to press their like grappling button like 100 times.
Okay.
Over and over and over again. And then if the pilots are flying perfectly straight, it steals it.
Oh, you go down that tunnel thing. Okay, when I was piloting, we did that. So I piloted well enough to get us on the right track there.
But your engineers might not have done it correctly. Like the first time I did it, we grabbed it. And
he was probably too busy yelling at me.
One of the pilots, the pilot that was flying left and right, slammed it to the left and it broke the cables off.
Oh, man.
So we didn't get it. But we did get it once. But then it doesn't matter if you get it or you don't get it, because the next scene is you have to shoot a gunner ship down, and then everything starts crashing down, and then you light speed away.
Okay. I am curious. Did you feel like so we see the Millennium Falcon in Black Spire Outpost. Do you feel like you entered that ship? Do you feel like you walked into that ship?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, neither did I. And that was disappointing to me because, legit.
If you're following the pattern of the queue line, you're entering the complete opposite direction.
And I wasn't even thinking too much about it. I had read somewhere, like, obviously, you're not walking in the facade that you're looking at, or it's not even a facade. You're not looking at the set piece of the ship. You're walking through different hallways and stuff that lead you to the quote-unquote entrance of the Millennium Falcon. But I gotta tell you, when I walked into, quote-unquote, the Millennium Falcon, I was like, it looks like it. It looks like it's spot on.
Yeah.
But based on the amount I walked and where I walked, I do not feel like I just walked into the thing I looked at the entrance to this attraction. And that was kind of a bummer.
And the only entrance into it is from a loading ramp.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Like how you get into the Falcon would be walking up a ramp.
Oh, you're saying in real life. Yeah. So that is not a convincing effect to me. I kind of wish you just entered through the ramp, and then the problem is you would immediately be in the ship at that point, and what are they going to do with the queue, right?
Right.
I wish there was a different solution. I wish that there was a queue that led you to that ship entrance like we see in the films.
Right.
And then that's where we were in that waiting room area. I don't know. That was kind of like, not as convincing as I had read. But the ship is beautiful inside.
And on outside.
And on the outside. It's beautiful.
And you get to, on part of the queue line when you're walking through, you get to see the ship from above.
Yeah.
And it's really
And
cool.
underneath. Yeah, they have some really cool views of the Millennium Falcon as you're walking through the experience. So that's really, really cool. It's a cool attraction. What would you, if ABCDE ticket, what would you give it?
I give it a C.
You'd give it a C ticket?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty bad, considering this is probably one of the most expensive and high-tech attractions Imagineering's ever created.
Yeah, so like for me, like it was fun once, and then each time had even more diminishing returns.
Wow.
So like, would I go out of my way to ride this ride? No.
Yeah.
If it happened to have no wait, would I be willing to go on it? Yes. The one nice thing about the waiting is even if it says like a 2-hour wait, it flies by really quick.
And it's not 2 hours. Yeah, it's when we were there, the time, June 24th, all this will change. But as of right now, just go between your middle 2-hour window if you have the reservation for 4 hours. And honestly, it's like a 10-minute wait most of the time, or between 10 and 30 minutes. And if it says 30 minutes, it's not even close to that long.
Yeah, when I first went on it, it was an 120-minute wait.
Yeah.
And we waited 35 minutes.
So, they're still working it out. I mean, that's great. We love that. That's fantastic for us. But to that argument, my argument would be like, well, then you don't have to rush us through story. Like, let us see the full pre-show. Let us.
And I feel like once the Rise of the Resistance opens and it takes most of the crowd to that ride, I think they'll calm down through just like get through.
I don't know. I'm always amazed by that because like even I'll do like older attractions at the parks and now I just feel like they're like rush you through because like people don't care. They've seen this pre-show a billion times, but you've got to always assume there's somebody who's doing this thing for the first time. And certainly right now on the Millennium Falcon, that is the case. There are people doing it for the first time.
Like, for example, later in that day, we went through Indy and they rushed us through the story room so quickly.
You mean with the projection screen?
Yeah.
No, but that is set up in a beautiful way where there is a beginning and an end technically, but the same information is repeated so much that is not a room meant to hold you. At least I don't feel like it's meant to hold you to watch the entire film. It's there to tell you the specific plot points in which you can probably get in about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
You'll hear the same plot points told in different ways throughout. Whereas with Millennium Falcon, it was like, no, he was telling you stuff you needed to know watching that screen.
And some of the cast members would ask you questions and stuff while you were in there. Like, oh, do you understand what you're doing in here? Do you know how the engineering works?
I never got that.
They tried to be in character as much as possible and not be kind of robotic. We're loading you on a ride type of people.
I felt rushed all 3 times being loaded. It was like, put on the seatbelt, hit the button. Okay, let's go. I was like, what? Like, I didn't even have a moment to really just take in where I was sitting. It was like, all right, let's go do this. And
yeah, one of the times I went on with an entire group of strangers, every single person was a stranger to each other.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they didn't explain a single thing. And
it's like, good luck.
Sit down.
You'll be friends by the end of this.
And that was actually one of the more enjoyable times because we were like, kind of like encouraging each other, like, shoot the harpoon gun.
Yeah, I gotta tell you guys, if you're riding this with strangers, regardless of how bad the ride is, don't yell at the strangers. Don't tell them they're sucking at their job. Like, it's really crappy. I mean, it's just a stupid thing to do. If you have a really bad experience, afterward, go to a cast member out of earshot of that stranger and just be like, listen, my pilot was terrible. I didn't wait an hour to have that experience. Can I go again? And my guess is that they will accommodate you. In most cases, I've had that happen. In fact, when I was just in Orlando, I rode Frozen Ever After, and I had one of those people, my biggest pet peeve, people taking flash photos during the attraction. And no matter how many times I said to them, or even the people coming over the loudspeaker, shut off your flash, they just didn't. The whole ride drives me up the wall. Go talk to a cast member, they load you right back on. Like, they're cool like that. They understand you're waiting in a long line. You want to have a good experience. So just, don't be a jerk to the strangers. My guess is they're probably not trying to crash your ship. They've just probably never flown the Millennium Falcon before.
And if you are highly competitive in it, make sure you only go with people that are the same way.
Yeah, and you know what? If you really want to be a pilot, if you're like, listen, this ride isn't going to be fun unless I'm the pilot, just tell them that. When they're assigning the roles, simply say to them, hey, can I stand back and wait for the next group? I want to be a pilot. I've never had a cast member say no to me, ever, when it comes to a request like that for a ride.
And of the multiple times that I went on the ride, almost everyone was willing to switch positions.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not, I don't know. It's not that big a deal when it comes to it. But, yeah, I am curious. You gave this a C ticket, rating. What is, like, your favorite Disney ride?
At Disneyland, I would probably say my favorite ones are, like, Hyperspace Mountain, Splash Mountain, Indiana Jones.
Okay. Indiana Jones Adventure, Disneyland, I would say. In fact, Indiana Jones Adventure is better than Smugglers Run, in my opinion. But, I mean, it is a screen-based attraction, and to me, physical stuff will always beat screen-based no matter how good it is. So, yeah, Smugglers Run, interesting.
And Hyperspace Mountain, I even feel, is a better Star Wars experience.
Whoa, that is a bold statement.
Yeah.
You think Hyperspace Mountain is a better experience than Millennium Falcon Smugglers
You're
Run?
launched into a battle, and how the story plays out while you're rolling around Space Mountain.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. There's lasers shooting everywhere. You blow up the Star Destroyer at the end.
Wow. You really didn't like this attraction.
No, so I enjoyed the attraction. I enjoy the others more.
It's interesting. Now, here's the big question, and this is a question I've been struggling with from the day it was announced that Galaxy's Edge was being built. Do we get rid of Star Tours? We both agree it's a better Star Wars attraction at Disneyland Park. Do we remove it from the park and remove all traces of Star Wars outside of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge?
So here's why I think they're going to keep it, is because it gives them a reason to have Darth Vader, Darth Maul, and all the classic characters, because there is no classic characters besides Chewie and Stormtroopers in Batuu.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And as much as I love Star Tours, I have a real issue with like Star Wars taking over Disneyland Park. For it to be essentially two lands now, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think the ride should be there, but at the same time, it's like if you want Darth Vader in the park.
And it's such a good attraction, especially since I don't even know. I remember when they first announced The Adventures Continue. It was a 54 different versions of the attraction based on the way that the films mixed. But they've added so many scenes since then. They must be into the hundreds of, the combinations must be hundreds now.
Yeah, I did the ride when I was there, and I had done a couple scenes that I was like, I didn't even know this existed.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's cool that they keep plussing that attraction. I am curious to see if we start getting that with Millennium Falcon in a few years.
So the rumor is this is just the first
I would assume
of many that they're going to create for
I feel like
riders.
With any screen-based attraction these days, you need to have numerous versions. Like, it's just kind of an expectation at this point. People expect to have many versions so that the repeatability is great. As you said, and I would agree, the repeatability currently is not great. So, yeah, I welcome new versions. I would say it's probably going to be at least a year and a half until we see any of that. But that'd be cool. They have to stick within a very specific timeline because of the way that they've set up Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So that's where it's going to become difficult.
So here's the one thing I was really bummed about, which I read about after we had left the land. If you do not have the Disney Play app...
Yeah.
The scores you get at the end mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, like I knew that going in, but at the same time...
Because apparently if you're in there, it Bluetooths to your phone, your score, and then you can buy things within the park.
You can't buy anything.
Like in the game that they're playing.
It's... The app is a whole other episode that I'm going to be doing with Preston, but like I found the app to be fairly stupid, and you kept hearing this thing like, based on how well you do on your journey on the Millennium Falcon, you may become approached by a stormtrooper or something, talking to you about it. I didn't see that happen to anybody. It certainly didn't happen to me. I did download the app, so...
I actually don't think that's in the park.
I don't either.
Because when they were talking about it at D23 2 years ago, I was like, there's no way this is going to be doable.
Yeah. I don't say it's not doable. Here's the thing. Once again, the thing I keep thinking every time I talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is I feel like this would be a better experience with magic bands, because magic bands are so great at creepily detecting where you are, what you're doing. Like, I know you haven't experienced them at Walt Disney World, but, it sends you photos of you on the attraction, like, automatically. You're like, oh, how did it even know I was there? Like, it detects things where it sends you photos, sends you videos. Like your name, you'll start seeing it in attraction queues or in actual attractions. So like it just knows stuff that I don't think your smartphone can access as easily. I mean, I'm sure there's some legal situation as far as like just tapping into your smartphone, whereas with a Magic Band, they have full control over it. So I feel like this would work better with a Magic Band. I'm very curious to see
how it does in Florida.
Once it opens in Florida, if Magic Band replaces a lot of that stuff. And I think it would be a better experience. But yeah, overall, I didn't see any of the whole interacting of based on how you fly the Falcon. If anybody listening did have that experience, please write DisneyCoastToCoast@gmail.com.
And I know originally they said if you wrecked the Falcon, there'd be bounty hunters after you within the park. There's no bounty hunters in the park.
It's lacking characters right now. I think that's something we will eventually see. Once again, I think that this is phase one. It very much is phase one. I think we're going to see a lot added. Let's face it, this opened sooner than It opened, it was announced it was going to open sooner than we expected. Bob Iger at one point in an interview said June. I'm like, whoa, June. Okay, wow. All right, cool. And then it became, May. It was May 31st, but still it was May. So I'm like, wow, so it was bumped up even sooner. So because when he announced June, I know that there were people at Imagineering saying, there's no way. Like, they're like, even if we go to the last day of June, we're not going to be ready. So to go from we're not going to be ready by the last day of June to May 31st, there were decisions made to cut things, which is fine. I get it. I think that was primarily to appease people since the big attraction wasn't going to be ready till months after when that was expected. So it was like, okay, how do we A, stop people from rioting, and B, start making money on this thing now that we've dumped a ton of money into? And the answer was open it in May, and people will be thrilled to experience it. And I'll tell you, they made a ton of money because the amount of merchandise sold. The amount of merch sold and food sold was insane. So
$200 for the lightsaber, $100 for the droid.
Yeah, and food.
Pens.
I definitely spent more on food there than I ever do at Disneyland, just because it was a new thing. I wanted to try it.
And the food is more expensive in that land.
A little bit. I didn't feel like it was terribly more expensive. I mean, the blue milk is overpriced, but other than that, like to get a meal, it's like $13, which would be like Rancho del Zocalo would be like that, or French Market. I feel like I didn't feel the food was overly priced for the most part, but. Yeah, so I get the thing, and it makes it exciting because we're going to see this land grow and grow and grow, and I think there's tons of potential, not only with a major new attraction opening. We already know that there are expansion pads, so this land can be expanded to even larger than the 14 acres it is, and there's going to be tons of little things, whether it's the Play Disney Parks app or adding more characters. There's going to be tons of that stuff that in like the next few years, I think are going to be epic, and I think whenever a new Star Wars movie comes out, the way we keep seeing new scenes added to Star Tours, I think we're just going to see new elements added to this land, and I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I kind of feel like when the new Star Wars movies come out, that they'll switch the land to that time period.
That would be interesting. That would be a huge overhaul. I do think maybe at some point they'll do that.
Because after Rise of the Skywalker comes out, the next movies are going to be set thousands of years in the past.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see that happen, but if they do that, like that's gonna kind of be a whole other opening. They'll have to open it all over again, which I don't know. To me, just make sure it's as much its own thing as it can possibly be, and that's the safest way to deal with it. So it's interesting, but Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run, not as good as I think people wanted it to be, or at least I wanted it to be, but an enjoyable ride nonetheless. I think once the Rise of the Resistance opens, I think that Smugglers Run is going to have like such a small wait.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be very popular on the slow days.
Yeah.
Out of peak, I think it'll be 30 minutes or under at all times.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, that's crazy to think about. We are so spoiled. That's what it is. We've experienced so many amazing attractions that I just think it's tough to shock the audience now. And, if you're a fanboy of Star Wars, if it's always been your dream to fly the Millennium Falcon, my guess is that it's a dream come true. And that's awesome. And listen, there's a ride opening this summer over at Universal Jurassic World, the ride at Universal Studios Hollywood, that I am beyond excited for. And I know that if I were to sit and analyze it the way that I am this, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of problems I have with it. But the fact that we're getting a new Jurassic Park franchise ride is just kind of null and voids all that stuff for me. I say that now. Wait till I experience it. If those dinosaurs look terrible, I'll be so upset. But, so it depends on how much your heart is in Star Wars as to how much you're going to like the Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run, because I don't think the technology, for the most part, is mind-blowing, if that makes sense.
Agreed. And I think the future of the ride is they're going to have to start adding new missions sooner than later.
So the question is going to be this: when that happens, are you going to pick and choose, or is it going to be based on if you take a left turn or a right turn? Is it really the pilot making that decision? That's what will be interesting.
I feel like the new missions will be different. Like you won't go to Corellia to steal coaxial.
Yeah, but how?
You might go into a battle to help the resistance out.
But I don't think they'll get rid of the original attraction. Don't you think they'll add it in where it's like?
Oh yeah, no, I think it'll be like Star Tours, where
So
it's
going
like
to be random.
surprise.
Yeah. So that certainly causes repeatability, but it's also problematic in the sense that you're like, I just want to go to X, Y, or Z, and it's like better ride again. So it's interesting.
It's like good luck.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run before we get going here?
Just the first time you ride it, you're gonna have a really good time.
Yeah, and
It's fun.
And try and pay attention in the queue as much as possible. I think the story, knowing the story, understanding the story of this, really makes for a better experience. And you're probably going to be rushed through it. I would say try and stop them from doing that to you. And if you can't, just try and take in as much information as you can. Because, that's what it's all about. It's about story.
And here's the biggest tip. Go with your group through the queue line to start, ride the ride, go through single rider, get through it in like 10, 15 minutes, and then you can go explore inside like the lounge area and all the little details that you really wanted.
I'm really curious if there are people who like their color group has been called to leave the area that, the photo op area. And we're just like, I don't want to. Like, I want to hang here for a while and then I'll go ride. I wouldn't be surprised if that's happened.
It probably already has happened.
And I wonder how they deal with that, because that would be problematic. But in any case, Victor, thanks so much for coming on the show to talk about Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
I do want to give a shout out to my patrons, Philip, Rio, Monet, Anna, Diego, James, Gerardo, and Jared. Thank you so much for being patrons of Disney Coast to Coast and supporting the show. If you'd like to become a patron and get stuff like Q&A live streams, early episode releases, you could also be a guest on Trivia Time and so much more. It all starts for just $1 over at patreon.com/DisneyCTC. That's patreon.com/DIZNEYCTC. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.